Much of the funding for the International Olympic Committee actually comes from huge broadcasting deals. Notably, here in the United States, NBC has paid just over $12 billion to carry the Games through 2032. The rest of the burden generally falls on the taxpayers of the host city or nation. In recent years, the majority of the Games have been able to turn a profit, but prior to the 1984 Games in Los Angeles, well, that wasn't the case. That's when the whole situation started for a limited number of huge blue chip sponsors and the bidding wars for the TV rights. So let's go ahead and dig into all of this with host of The Big Picture and media consultant Holland Cooke and Ben Holden. He's the host of the Ultimate Sports Hub. Thanks both of you for being here to discuss this. Now, Ben, I want to start with you.
Sure.
Ratings are down, obviously, for this Olympics, and at least here in the United States, and they've been kind of trending down over the last several games, but they're not even close to what we saw in 2018. And it seems to me, as just an onlooker without real data as to why that is, there's not a lot of big names anymore. We can't, there's not the Michael Phelps, there's not the Usain Bolts. Shaun White in the last two Olympic Games has kind of been out of the name. I mean, it feels like in the U.S. we have curling, and we don't even know who the biggest figure skater is. So right. From a sports perspective, what are you seeing there?
Well, I just think I would start number one with it's awesome to be with you guys. Number one, to me, I think the time has a lot to do with it. I mean, we've been covering it pretty extensively, what we're doing over at Portable and watching games. I mean, games are starting at 11 o'clock at night. So I think that's one thing. But I think as you and I talked this morning about a little bit, I thought about this after we had talked, and there's just so many more options. And I do think your point is valid too, Brent. There just aren't, that star power isn't there, so to speak. I mean, look at the hockey tournament. I mean, look, I love the guys that we cover in the KHL, but they're not the stars and the global faces of the sport of hockey. But I think the hockey's fine. I mean, you're going to watch hockey whether you know about it or not. If you're a hockey fan, you're going to watch. But I think, number one, it's more options are available for people to watch. Number two, I think in this case with this Olympics and even the last one with that 13-hour time difference, I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, certainly, especially when it comes to that coverage all around. Now, speaking of some of those options that you mentioned, Holland, I know when it comes to the Olympic Games, typically that's something that we would think we'd just turn on the TV and it's there so we watch it. But especially here in the U.S., NBC has been pushing to make these games more digital, to put that coverage on the digital side. With the price that they are paying for it, is that all worth it?
Well, when you talked about those rights fees, there were 9 zeros in there. So no one channel can pay for all of this. It was interesting to see the hierarchy, though. On NBC, you got women's figure skating. On CNBC, you got women's curling. So they're still playing the legacy stick and relentlessly driving us to Peacock. They really want to obsolete the legacy channels and repair to a less regulated frontier on the internet where they're in more control and circumvent all kinds of do's and don'ts they can't do on the air. But just to pay the bill, you got to spread things out. And to Ben's point about being 13 hours away, these particular Olympics, for that reason, are very good reruns. They can schedule what they want when they want it. And I think what we've seen is that the Super Bowl just now, maybe the last vestige of, as you say, we're all watching it live. You know, February 9, 1964, all of America sat still, and Ed Sullivan said, "The Beatles." And you don't get that anymore, except for the Super Bowl. And these Olympics, because they're so expensive, because they're so far away, and because we are a digital world now, they've got to just spray it out on as many platforms as they can.
Yeah, it really does seem like even though in some ways we'd be more connected than ever, at the same time we're becoming more disconnected. However, we have seen a lot of coverage. And speaking of that coverage, Ben, I know that you recently spoke with 5-time gold medal winning speed skater Bonnie Blair. And during that conversation, she showed off some of her medals. I want to play a clip of that. Take a listen.
This is Calgary, and you can tell it's kind of a little worn around the edges, and they were engraved on the bottom. It kind of depicts all the different sports on the back of it. Albertville, these were made with Lalique crystal. So they're very fragile. So they really don't go too many places just because they are so breakable. And then the Lillehammer games, those were kind of cool because, you know, this being more of a hockey program, the when they built the hockey rink, they built it into the side of the mountain. So when they dug it out, they used the granite for the interlay of the medals.
Now, Ben, we're always talking about the price of overall medals here on this show. So the question then becomes, what are these medals actually made out of?
You know, I did some research like you guys did, and I was stunned at how little they're actually worth. And most of them are actually made out of silver, right around 93%. Even the golds, the bronzes as well, they're made out of different metals. About 93% of the metal is silver. So the going rate right now is about $800 or $900 for a gold medal, which, I mean, you ask any athlete like Bonnie, she's one of the great Olympic champions, not only in the U.S., but globally. Great Olympic champion. The blood, sweat, and the tears they put into winning those has even more value than they're worth. But again, I was stunned at how little they're worth.
And what she showed there was fascinating.
Yes.
And I mean, we cut out the clip of her pulling out her bronze and said, well, this is actually in pretty much perfect condition, but we don't bring that one out very often. Interesting, another fact about this is they haven't actually been made of 100% gold since 1912, apparently. That was a fun fact I found while we were working out the story. Now, Holland, I guess now we talk about where does this all go from here? You know, prior to the 84 games, and we did a story about this during the summer games, prior to the 84 games, there were headlines in Time magazine saying, are the Olympics dead? Are we heading in that direction right now?
I think not. And the reason because they are so expensive is the reason that sports is spreading out everywhere. Beginning a couple of seasons ago, there are baseball games you can only see on YouTube because the rights are so expensive that no one entity can fund them all. And just this past week, as you reported, CBS is changing its corporate name to Paramount. And if this tells us anything, is that it's more about the content than the platform, because people will find it.
Well, absolutely. And I think what they need to do is, again, get the names. I mean, at least as an American audience, I'm sure in other countries they are seeing this. Ben, we have about a minute left. What are we looking for in these last couple of days of the Olympics?
Well, I mean, tonight you have a game starting at 11 o'clock Eastern time. You got Russia and Sweden. They're going at it. They play in the morning. The night game tonight is Finland and Slovakia. I picked 3 weeks ago. I said Russia, Sweden, Finland. I'm still alive in the pool there for the podium. So, you know, disappointing the U.S. lost, but that's just the nature of the game. But I'm still sticking with Russia. That Russia-Sweden game is going to be unbelievable. And Finland's been playing great. Slovakia, they're the Cinderella story of the 4 teams left.
And like you said, I think if you're a fan, and whichever games we're talking about here, whether it's basketball in the summer or hockey in the Winter Olympics, I think if you're a fan of those sports, you're certainly going to want to invest in them. Because like you said, even though the NHL stars aren't there, it's still good games. It's still people who are trying to live their dream, and they're getting to do it on an international stage. Ben Holden and Holland Cooke, thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet.
Thank you.
And that's it for this time. You can catch Boom Bust on demand on the Portable TV app, available on smartphones and tablets through Google Play and the Apple App Store by searching Portable TV. You can also find Ben Holden there.
And that's right, and Portable TV can be downloaded on Samsung Smart TVs and Roku devices, or simply check it out at portable.tv. We'll see you next time.